Welcome to episode 2 of Beauty and the Books, where I put on makeup while I talk about my recent reads. Today's look will feature the Dragon palette from Hourglass. I know they recently launched their seasonal or holiday palettes for this year. Since episode 1, I have actually read, I think, almost 20 books because it has been quite a few months since my first episode. So we'll see how many books we can get through. If we don't get through all of them, maybe I'll do episode 3. I'm using the Misha BB cream as my base because it has SPF 42 and I've also had this for a while, so I really gotta use it up. I have a dampened beauty blender, or rather like a blender. It's not the Beauty Blender brand, and it is very easy to put on. Jumping straight into the first book I read, which I actually have a physical copy of. I usually read on my Kindle, so it's very rare for me to have a physical copy of a book. But this is Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. He was general manager at 11 Madison Park. If you live in New York City, or if you are into the restaurant Michelin 3-star Michelin restaurant theme, you for sure know 11 Madison Park. It was rated as the best restaurant in the world. You might think this is a book for people who want to go into the hospitality business, but no. If you work in business, period, this is, in my opinion, a must read. And I give it 5 stars. And by the way, in my book rating system, I only give full stars. I don't give partial stars because I think it's pointless. If you want partial stars, then why don't you rate a book from 0 to 100? I also never hold back on giving 0 or 1 or 2 stars to books. I've noticed a lot of booktubers or book talk people don't really give really low ratings, but then what's the point of having a 0 to 5-star rating if every single book ranges from 3.25 to 5 star. Giving a book a 0 to 1 star doesn't mean that it is trash. It's just that it's not my taste. So anyways, this book, very much my taste. If you saw episode 1, you also would know that I don't typically go for businessy books because I went to business school undergrad as well as master's degree. But this just shows you so many good bite-sized advice and examples of how you could go just a little bit above and beyond and make your customer, or even people you interact with in your life, feel a little bit better. What resonated with me the most was in this book, he quoted Walt Disney twice, and the quote goes, "People can feel perfection." And I just couldn't agree with it more. I have, since reading this book months ago, used this mentality in my actual work. I am a marketer so many times, and it's also a very easy read. It's not dry whatsoever. There is a bit of a journey that you are going on, and there are lots and lots of stories and examples, and you can truly also pick up any chapter of the book and just read a couple minutes a day. I just always keep it on my desk so that when I feel like I need a little bit of inspiration, I can refer to this easily. Let's dive into this palette. There are 6 shades in the palette, 2 of which are finishing powders, and these 2 are blushes. This is more of a bronzer, and this is a highlighter, which is why I got my hands on this palette. I actually bought it secondhand because it was obviously sold out right away. I always start with this bronzer slash contour shade. The Hourglass powders are truly superior in quality. They all give you that slight sheen. The next book I read was The Wishing Game by Meg Shaffer. This is more of a magical realism novel. I'm not completely sure of the genre, but it is a novel, and it is a very heartwarming story about foster care, about parenthood, about riddles and wishes. So it is a very cozy read. I actually think this would be a very great fall read when you just want to feel cozy but also, you know, hopeful, and you want to hear a heartwarming story. The story could be a little bit shorter. So I rated this 3 stars. It's definitely more of an average novel that I definitely don't plan on rereading, but if you just want a quick-ish cozy story, this is a good one. I use the same shade for my nose contour, and I also like to use it as the eyeshadow. I've been so lazy when it comes to makeup these days that I don't even use any of my eyeshadow brushes anymore. I simply just use this nose contour brush, which is the ColourPop F10. I don't know what the intention of this brush is. I got it as part of a set and I have been loving this brush. It's just so easy to use, so soft. The next book that I read was Hunt Gather Parent by Micheline Ducliffe. I am definitely butchering the author's name. It is a very fascinating parenting book. If you are also a new parent, author, or also a journalist, she went to study kind of the hunter-gathering way of raising children. So much of parenting is through nonverbal communication, especially when your kid is young, before they can, you know, fully express themselves and communicate with you verbally. The type of energy you give out to your children will be reciprocated. So if your child is, you know, screaming and running around going crazy, if you start yelling at your child, they're just gonna think, oh, okay, we're in this, you know, energy competition now where let's just see who can release more energy. Versus if you go to your child, use your gesture, use your nonverbal communication, and have a very slow and calm and quiet voice, that might be more effective to calm your child and yourself. There's also a lot less praise, and there is a lot of just making the kid feel like they are part of the family. Having your toddler help you with chores even though they could mess up, having them watch you do the chores, because guess what? That's more entertaining to them than buying them a new toy and attempt to keep them entertained for 5 minutes and then they get bored of the toy and start over. I'm so glad that I read this book while I'm still a new-ish parent. This is a 5-star read for me. I think if you are wanting to be a parent, are a new parent, this will be quite eye-opening for you. I'm gonna set my under eye with this finishing powder. Definitely used a brush too big, but I couldn't be bothered. My favorite part of this palette is actually the highlight. It is just so beautiful, like a champagne-ish highlight shade that, oh, look at this. The next book that I read was Happy Place by Emily Henry, probably one of the most popular books on the internet. And I used to really not like romance novels, but I also have come to realize reading is not just about being educated. There could be so many different reasons for one to want to read. You can read for escapism, you can read for just pure entertainment, you can obviously read to learn new things. You can also read to, I don't know, release your emotions, to build empathy towards other people. There's so many reasons to read, and I feel like Happy Place is a book where I was thoroughly entertained, but I was also emotionally moved. It's a very heartwarming book that left me with quite hopeful feelings, and that is a success, I think, in terms of reading a book and getting, you know, emotional takeaways from it. I'm rating this book 4 stars, and I could see myself potentially rereading it. Let's finish the eye look. I have been obsessed with ColourPop Ritz, which is basically the ColourPop dupe for the cowboy shade of the Urban Decay eyeshadow. It's this like glittery, wet look. The next book is another parenting, and the last parenting book that I read, I think I'm done reading parenting books. Otherwise, I'd be too paranoid and like over analyzing what I'm doing right or wrong. It's called Bringing Up Bebe by Pamela Druckerman. This is essentially the philosophy of French parenting. What's really interesting to me, different from kind of American way of parenting, is there is a lot of pause in that you kind of want to give your child a moment, especially when they are, I don't know, screaming or crying or, you know, releasing these behavior that make you want to immediately go and figure out what is wrong. Because sometimes nothing is wrong. They could simply just be entertaining themselves, regulating their own emotions. They might not need you to step in. And then also, sometimes it's also helpful to give yourself a little bit of a pause to then understand, what do they really need? Do they really need you to go in their room, pick them up from their bed, or they're simply having a little bit of a bad dream and could fall asleep right after? There's also a concept of being sage, S-A-G-E, in that you communicate through your eye contact and you kind of think about a command or what you want to communicate, but don't say it. Look your child in the eye and try to communicate such command. I am dying to try this method out because I very much question, you know, how could it really happen? But I am genuinely very intrigued, and this also kind of ties to the nonverbal communication in Hunt-Gather Parenting, the other book that I read, which is all around just, instead of using words, use your nonverbal ways to communicate what you want to communicate. I rated this one, I think, a 4-star. This could be just a little bit shorter. I feel like some of the ideas were regurgitated maybe for a little bit too long. Moving on to the next book, which is Word Slut by Amanda Montell. This feels more like a podcast to me because it's very much like, you know, journalist written, a well-researched history behind male-centric words, why certain words are just inherently male-centric, and how the fringe society uses certain words like yas, Y-A-S, to kind of protect themselves, but then these words are then used as like cool words by the mass. It definitely makes you think more when you speak. Also, phrases like, you know, doesn't always assume uncertainty, which is interesting. I've always been more conscious about filler words, like I myself use a lot of like, which I hate. But also after listening, I listened to the audiobook of this one. After listening to this audiobook, I'm also giving myself more grace to just feel comfortable when I speak. I don't want to take 10 seconds to make sure that my next sentence doesn't have a single like or filler words before I say that sentence. I feel like that also is very unnatural. This probably isn't the main takeaway that the author wanted you to take away, but that was one of the things that I found quite interesting. And like I said earlier, this does feel more like a podcast to me. So in terms of like the book value, I'd rather this being a, you know, maybe 2-episode podcast. I'm rating this a 3-star because I feel like this could be covered, the content could be covered in just a couple episodes of podcast, but it's nonetheless still pretty interesting content, and I've definitely learned something along the way. The next book I read was The Storied Life of A.J. Fikri by GRWM. Maybe it's just me being a new mom. something about this book just hits differently. It's heartwarming at times, it's funny at times, there is a little bit of drama slash, you know, slight plot twist, I guess. But the last 10% of the book, I remember, made me just tear up nonstop. I think just there's a lot of it when it comes to parenting, taking care of a child that I very much resonate with, and hurts me to see how the story went in the last 10%, but it's also extremely heartwarming, and I feel like I could just feel all of the happy and sad emotions all hitting me at once. So I'm giving this a 5-star read. I think something about Gabrielle Zevin's writing just hits differently. She is able to pull out all the emotions from inside me, and I will give her 5-star credit for that. It's also a pretty short novel, so if you are in a reading slump, if you are in need for just a very warming story, this is a great read. By the way, the mascara I was using is called Man Eater by Tarte. It's part of a mascara set. I got it as a gift. I love the packaging, first of all. Who doesn't like this gold foil cheetah print? But it is also, like, it's dramatic, but it's also everyday friendly. And I will say it is a little bit on the thicker side, so sometimes it's a little bit harder to take off. This shade is called Divine Light, and it just works so well with the rest of the shades in the palette. And you can see, even after powdering, my highlight is still very much glowing. Onto our lips now, which is my favorite step of my Get Ready With Me routine. This, I'm pretty sure I used the same shade in my first episode of Beauty and the Books. This is the Chanel Rouge Cocoa Balm in 916 Flirty Coral. It is a corally shaded tinted lip balm. So it looks super bright, but it's not as vibrant once it's on the lips. And I just like these products because they nourish your lips, but they also have a very like everyday friendly color payoff. The last book I'm going to talk about today is Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke. It is a very, very short story. I think the audiobook was only like 3 hours long or something. If you're in a book slump, if you want to pick up a little bit of a spooky fall read, this is the perfect book to start your reading journey or to rekindle your reading journey. It is a thriller. I was hooked from minute 1 to the last minute of the story. Very easy, quick read. I'm giving this a 3-star because I think this is a great one to get you out of a book slump, but I'm missing a little bit of the why behind this story. Like, yes, it was really gripping, but then at the end I was like, wait, so why did all of this happen? Why should we care? I feel like if we had another even just like 20-50 pages of that little bit of the why, this would have been a easy 4-star. So I knocked it down 1 star because it's kind of a brainless thriller story. Last thing I'm gonna put on top of my lip is this e.l.f. Reviver Melting Lip Balm. So this is the dupe for the Summer Fridays lip balm, and I actually prefer the e.l.f. because the color payoff is better. It applies more evenly. This smells like, is this vanilla? Vanilla toffee. So yes, that's exactly what it smells like. So if you don't like scented products, then this is not for you. But I quite like to top it on top of whatever lip product I'm wearing. I will say, because it's quite an oily formula, like the applicator gets a little bit messy. So this is definitely a like one season product. You probably don't want to save it for many months, and I feel like it'll just feel really nasty. Here is our finished look, and I have mainly used all the shades here. I would love to hear your book recommendation. So let me know in the comments what's one book that everyone should read.